Welcome to IceTime, the Buffalo News' hockey podcast. I'm Lance Lysowski, the Sabres beat writer for the Buffalo News. Of course, joined, of course, with Mike Harrington. Mike, we missed, of course. Yeah, we didn't record last week. The holiday, it was tough to fit it in. People were riding high off the California trip, and we come back with them with an episode on this.
We waited. We timed it well. We waited for something to talk about. So, I'm going to just, for people here, I'm a little in the darkness today. I got a burned out light bulb in here, and I decided to stay in some darkness because it's kind of appropriate. So we're going to talk about the first segment. I even brought a prop just for you, Lance. I have a prop.
Nice.
Let's just talk, and I'm just going to hold this up the entire time I talk. So please go ahead, and we can discuss this.
All right. So we are going to start 4 topics. If you haven't listened to IceTime before, welcome. This is the Buffalo News' hockey podcast. We talk about the Sabres, Western New York Sabre hockey team, of course. And hey, we're going to start with this game against the Colorado Avalanche on Tuesday night. The Sabres up 4-0. 4-0 at the end of the first period. They scored 4 goals and 8 shots, chased another starting goalie from the game, 4th time this season, of course. Then the second period begins, Mike, and it just completely falls apart. We talked about coming to the season. The main story in our preview section was it's not all about the coach. It's about the players. And guess what? In this game, you wouldn't have known who was behind the bench because it looked like the exact same team that we saw just fumble the puck away last year, night in and night out, and throw away games that they could have won. And here we are. And they did it, Mike, they played down to their opponent at times earlier this season. We saw it with Columbus. We saw it with Montreal. Oof. This team won the Stanley Cup a little over 2 years ago. You come out and play that way. They go a 5 unanswered. They were up 4-1 at the end of the second period.
Right.
As much as they had played a terrible second, there was still a very good chance. All right, 20 minutes. Let's see what they can do. Luukkonen was playing well. The rest of the team just fell apart. It really, I think, going back and rewatching the game this morning, yes, I put myself through that this morning.
Yeah.
The older, more experienced players on this team, I didn't have a problem with their games, but all the younger guys, oof, is the best way to put it.
So here's what my takeaway on this, Lance, is the only positive. You want a positive? I'll be positive. Lindy Ruff called the timeout that Don Granato would have never called last year. Of course, right after he called it and told his players to relax, they crumbled and gave up the tying goal. These guys cracked like a beer glass in the freezer. You got to be kidding me. There's no excuse for it. And I realize it's Colorado, it's Nathan MacKinnon. But by the way, Nathan MacKinnon had 2 goals in November and didn't have a goal in 10 games. Well, they made Nathan MacKinnon look like Nathan MacKinnon, and he had 12 shot attempts and 9 shots on goal. You might have wanted to stay with number 29 once in a while when he was on the ice.
Didn't matter who they put out there against him. He just was skating circles around. And Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, that top line just caved the Sabres in.
Owen Power, the next time he takes out a guy in front of the net, is going to be the first time. How many times are we going to see this? I understand. He's young. He's also making $8 million. He was drafted number 1 overall. He should be able to simply tie up a man in front of the net. The winning goal looked just very similar to the goal in Long Island. The guy is standing there. Owen Power's right next to him. He's not in front of him. He's not tying up his stick. Nothing. And the biggest thing to me is everyone correctly used the word panic. And they did panic. And my problem with this is, how can you panic? You're not all rookies, and that's even what I said to Ruff after the game. I know Cousins and Dahlin and some of these guys are young age-wise. They're not young in hockey sense, and it was a complete panic. The defense panicked without Dahlin in the third period, which is certainly a problem going forward if Dahlin can't play. And Luukkonen started giving up some rebounds, which was unfortunate because he was really good in the second period. And maybe we should have taken more from the second period where the Sabres started to get caved in, but still survived, and it was 4-1. And the biggest thing in my column in the Buffalo News, I made this point, Lance. My biggest takeaway, the fans weren't booing like crazy till the very end. They were supportive of this team. They gave a huge ovation at the end of the first period. When Lehkonen scores the go-ahead goal, There's 4.5 minutes left. He puts Colorado up 5-4. And what happens? Thousands of people get up and leave. With 4.5 minutes left in a 1-goal game, they were done.
There were plenty of opportunities for this team to pull away from the Avalanche. 0 for 3 on the power play. Nicolas Aube-Kubel misses the net on a breakaway. Some really, they would enter the offensive zone, some very empty possessions. They gave it away too often.
JJ Peterka had a breakaway, and Devin Tays, really underrated top pair defenseman of the Avalanche. Devin Tays comes from 2 zones back and tracks JJ Peterka down from behind. Doesn't even get a shot on the breakaway. I thought that was just an awesome play, the kind of play you would never see a Buffalo Sabres defenseman make.
This is a perfect segue. We're going to split the rest of this podcast up into 3 topics. And of course, after another loss like this, because this fan base has experienced too many of these over the last 13 years, everyone wants to know who's at fault, right? It's very clear, Mike, up to this point, Lindy Ruff, not at fault. No. It's not a conversation. We're not going to discuss it. He's not at fault. So this comes down to the players. Is it the general manager? The owner? Let's start with the players. You mentioned a few of the guys. And, of course, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, Jason Zucker, that top line. They didn't score after the first period. They were still doing a lot, though. They were more responsible with the puck. They were trying to play a simple game. Almost their entire middle 6 was a disaster. JJ Peterka, blind backhand passes through the neutral zone. Zach Benson, blind backhand passes through the neutral zone. Dylan Cousins, unable to hold on to the puck entering the zone. You look at the third, Yuri Kulik, again, growing pains. There are 2, I don't even want to lump in, Dahlin's not a young player in my mind anymore. And Dylan Cousins that's really not either. But I'm looking at the players around Cousins when it comes to Benson, Peterka, Quinn. These guys, in my opinion, Mike, were a disaster in the second and third periods last night. And you ask yourself, who's Lindy Ruff going to put on the ice in this situation? He tried. He put Beck Mallenstein out there for a bit, Aube-Kubel. But Peyton Krebs had some turnovers. There's just not a lot of guys you can lean on with Jordan Greenway out of the lineup and half of your middle 6 struggling. We came into the season talking about, all right, this general manager is betting on these young players to really take that next step. That includes Peterka, Cousins. I'll put Cousins in there, Quinn, and Benson. Those are a group of players that needed to produce and really learn how to play winning hockey. They have yet to learn how to play winning hockey. They can score here and there. Cousins was really playing better before last night, but they just continue to repeat the same mistakes that we saw cost this team 2 years ago, and they still haven't learned from it.
And I really think it's understated how much this team misses Jordan Greenway.
Yes.
From the standpoint of the penalty kill, from the standpoint of just being a veteran guy. You think of Jordan Greenway's game. There's never panic in Jordan Greenway's game. He isn't jumpy with the puck. He doesn't play hot potato with the puck. And some of these guys do. And they really miss him. And that's been a loss you haven't been able to overcome. There are different interchangeable guys here. There's no one else. There's no one else like Jordan Greenway on this team. And in a game against a team that's got some big physical guys, you really notice the difference. You're really going to notice the difference against Winnipeg Thursday night without Jordan Greenway. And that's a big loss. And you're right, that middle 6 was terrible. There wasn't any veteran to calm this team down. Dahlin being out in the third period, the rest of the defense just couldn't handle it. Connor Clifton, +3 in the first period, makes a terrible pass up the middle, creates Colorado's first goal and gives them momentum. You just can't have plays like that, and they just do it all the time.
The defense core is a problem. I like Byram's game up until later. He lost some battles around the net. He's also guilty of that. But you look at Owen Power, Mike. They're paying him a lot of money, and I understand he's still a young player, and he needs to take a step, but he's making $8.35 million, and he is not playing to that contract right now. Offensively, yes, he's been great at even strength. He's really good with the puck. Without it, he is a liability right now. He is not getting better around his own net. And you got Jacob Bryson, who's losing battles around the net. Henry Jokiharju's making a lot of mistakes. The D-core is a very significant problem right now, which, of course, we're going to get to in the next conversation. But before I send it back to you, I really want to mention the fact that there is an overconfidence when it comes to some of these forwards that just makes no sense to me because they have never played in the playoffs. And you heard it from Dylan Cousins after the game. Everybody thought, guys start to think it's point night. What? Like, what have you guys accomplished that would lead you to believe that you can have a point night against Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar?
Right.
And personally, Mike, I just thought once the second period started and they started turning the puck over, and it reminded me of that Pittsburgh game where they started to do something very similar after that goalie got pulled. And I thought they're in for a world of trouble if this continues. And it continued. And these guys continue to try to make those high-risk plays that when they can pull them off, yeah, it's great. You can score goals. But they just completely overlooked the fact that how did you build that 4-0 lead? It wasn't by doing that, yet they continue to go back to it, even though there's a different coach behind the bench, and we've heard all about accountability. Well, there's only so much accountability. There's only so much you can do to hold guys accountable when there's so many players that are struggling in a game like that. He can't bench everybody. He can't.
Don't emphasize the defensive part either. They've only scored goals in 1 out of the last 6 periods.
Yep.
They scored 4 goals in the first. And now that's the 4th game. The opponent has pulled the goalie. They're 1-2-1. They're not 4-0 when the opponent pulls the goalie. They're 1-2-1. And I figured out last night the backup goalies who've been brought in have a .953 save percentage.
Scott Wedgwood.
Freaking Wedgwood went 22 for 22 last night. Scott Wedgwood.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott Wedgwood. I feel like who was it? Don LaGreca when he went on the Ed Kranepool rant with the Mets a few years ago. Scott Wedgwood, who could only play for the Amherst, who is a journeyman. 22 saves, no goals.
They just didn't challenge him almost at all. Yeah, the power play had 1 shot on goal and 3 opportunities. They had 3 shot attempts. There's no excuse for that. I don't want to hear about entries. I don't want to hear about frustration. There's enough talent for them to create more than that, Mike.
I'm frustrated.
There's enough talent to create more than that. And you can talk about coaching. It's individual players making really poor decisions with the puck. In the third period, they have a power play. Or I can't remember at this point.
Shoot.
Cousins gets 1 shot in the bumper. Peterka gets the puck back. What's he do with it? He forces a pass back to the bumper where they know it's coming, and there it goes. The puck's going the other way. So you're at the point, and I think it's time we can transition to the next topic, which is the general manager, Mike. And we can talk about how difficult it is to make trades. And yes, it is. We don't see him very often in December, but you've got to do something significant to add experience, composure, poise, leadership. Throw them all under one umbrella because this team needs them all. Because I'm okay. If you want to bring along Zach Benson into the NHL and go through the growing pains with a young player or two, that's fine. When you got 5 guys going through it, Mike, it's tough to win in this league. It is tough when you're the youngest team in the NHL year after year. And even though, Dahlin shouldn't be counted in that. Henry Okihar, UPL, no. I'm talking about Peterka, Quinn, Cousins, and Cousins shouldn't be in that, but he is under the circumstances, and Benson. They're still going through all these growing pains and still going through it, and it's time. You got to do something. And I don't want to hear that we're trying, because at this point, you're either going to lose the season. You can lose the season in December. We've seen this organization do it before. You got to do something. And there's enough. You hear enough trade chatter. There's enough guys available around the league. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a risk, but either you do it or the owner is going to find somebody else who does it for you, I would imagine.
I'm going to give Adams 10 seconds. 10 seconds to say he's in a bad spot. It's very tough. Guys have no trade clauses. No one's coming here. Okay, so we know that. We've established that. Now, what does he do to make a deal? If he wants to save his job, which I assume he does, he's literally just going to have to overpay. He's going to have to overpay to get somebody in here. That means a couple prospects, high picks. He's going to have to overpay to get a couple veteran players in here if he wants to save his job. He should be on the phone, and I'm sure he is, with Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh, who needs some speedy young forwards. He should be on the phone with Barry Trotz in Nashville, because they're a disaster. And those 2 teams jump right out at me that there are hockey trades to be made, potentially, with those teams. And if Adams has to overpay, this is it. This is his last shot. And I'm not talking about this season. I'm talking about his last shot might be this week. And something might need to go down here. I don't know what's going to happen. The Winnipeg Jets started 15-1. They're 3-7 in their last 10. If the Sabres lose that game, say 5-1, does Adams make it to Friday morning?
And it's not about
he's going to have to overpay if he wants to do anything, if he even has the opportunity to do it.
And you're not just mortgaging the future for short-term gains. This is also a long-term play. We've seen what losing year after year does to athletes. We saw it with Jack Eichel. We saw it with Sam Reinhart. We saw it with Rasmus Ristolainen. We saw it with Ryan O'Reilly. I can keep going down the list. You get guys who are comfortable with losing, or they just get so fed up that they want out. It's inevitable. It happens. And I'm not suggesting that any specific or particular player, but if losing becomes part of your culture again, it is difficult to get rid of it. And it is very difficult to rebuild in this league. I think that Kevin Adams underestimated that. I think that he thought that he was going to get more time from the owner and more patience from the fan base. No, that's not the way it works. And yeah.
I'm pointing right here. I got some baseball cards from the Natural right there on the wall. The Natural.
Losing is a disease.
Losing is a disease.
And that's why
Buffalo Sabres are.
It was a missed opportunity in 22-23 to not do more at the deadline. We can relitigate that all we want, but they didn't do enough other than they got Riley Stillman and an injured Jordan Greenway. Love the Greenway move, but that's really all any move of significance that was made. And they missed the playoffs by 1 point, right?
They didn't think they were that close. They got
exit meetings that spring were a celebration. Look what we did. We almost did it. Look where we're at. Instead of a real soul searching on where this team and organization needed to go, and look where we are right now. And I know, and I liked your point in your column about Alex Tuck's comment about we're light years ahead. In some ways, maybe, but no, you're not. And I think I understand why he mentions that, because you look at some of the players they brought in. There, we've seen snapshots of an identity of what this team, if it's going to be good, what it's going to look like. But it seems like night in and night out, one part of their game fails, whether it's the power play, the penalty kill, and that's why even if they do win, they never win comfortably. They're always desperately holding on for dear life because they can't put teams away. They don't score on the power play in key situations. They don't finish. They miss the net too often. They don't make plays. So, you need to change the composition of this roster a little bit more. And I don't even think it's I'm not suggesting you trade 5 players for 5 more, but you need another veteran. You need a veteran forward, and you need to tweak that defense core. You need to get another, and I'm not saying just defense, but their breakouts are really poor. Just every nuance that goes into playing defense, they don't have enough guys that you can really trust to step up and play 20 minutes in a night, Mike.
And that's the thing. Do you trust Kevin Adams to do that? I don't know. Part of me,
he's made pretty good trades though. I understand that point. I've seen others make it, but he got Ryan McLeod. He got Jordan Greenway. Those fourth line guys have not been an issue. The veterans, Jason Zucker's been good. The veterans they brought into this team have not been the problem. It's the kids that he's drafted. It's the kids that he's drafted and the guys that he's overpaid.
I want to see him get fired. I want to see him get fired in a stupid way. I want to see him get fired simply because I'm curious who in the world Terry Pegula would hire, who in the world would take the job. If it's not Jason Karmanos and they go outside, who wants to be the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres and inherit this hideous playoff drought, which is just an albatross on the entire organization? Would an experienced hockey guy want to come in here and deal with this? I know there's only 32 of these jobs, but why in the world would you want to deal with this job at this moment in their history?
Somebody who's not going to get another gig, Ray Shero.
Somebody's not going to get another gig. Kind of like Lindy Ruff was on his last gig.
Somebody who it's their last kick at it. But somebody who's younger, because you only get one. You can sometimes you only get one shot at it. Jason Potter only got one try, and he may not get another GM job.
No,
and people, that's how it works around the league. Sometimes you get it, and even if the circumstances are out of your control and you lose it, you don't get the seat. Getting that seat back's not easy. So. It is an interesting point, and I'm with you. Ownership is we see it across professional sports. The successful franchises, and the Bills are an exception to this rule since they share the same owner. But typically, if your owner understands stability and actually has patience and hires the right people and lets them do their jobs, you're successful. And clearly hasn't been the case with the Sabres, which is a great segue to cap up the podcast, Mike. Yeah, Terry Pegula, we have not heard from since he fired 22 people in one day, a little over 4 years ago.
We might hear from him soon.
We should have been hearing from him a lot more often. And he didn't even take any questions.
Get fired. He loves talking when people get fired. We might hear from him soon.
He gave a statement at Lindy Ruff's press conference, and he listed Lindy's resume and then took a seat. And that's basically all that happened there.
But nobody got fired there.
Yeah, nobody got. Well, somebody got fired the previous day, but Terry didn't have to get his hands dirty. Kevin took care of that for him, just like the other firings. So, no, I think especially with where this fan base is at, don't blame them. I think that the owner or Pete Guelli, who's done behind the scenes, has done really a fantastic job by all accounts in terms of his president's role. Somebody else has to step up, right?
No,
if I don't want to be
Guelli at all.
Well, I don't either, but I'm just telling you.
He hasn't been here for 13 years. Terry Pegula has.
Yeah, he's not.
And to me, we're not going to hear from Terry Pegula, but I just think it's a fascinating dynamic when you think about there are a lot of guys out there who own 2 professional teams in the 4 leagues.
Kroenke
and Benson did it, and there are guys out there. It's unbelievable how one guy can have 2 teams so completely opposite. And I know all the dynamic with the Bills. He gave the keys to McDermott, who would never.
We've had some interesting. We've written some pretty interesting. I remember we collaborated with our Bills guys on
a whole series
a few years back. Yeah, we did a whole series on it. It's a really interesting topic, and I do think it is hiring people, letting them do their jobs.
Yeah, and getting lucky though. I mean, McDermott was a first-time head coach, and McDermott brought in Bean.
Yeah.
And then they drafted the quarterback, and they got it right. But for the record, Terry wanted Mahomes, and McDermott said no, and then Terry wanted Allen. So Terry's been on board with the quarterbacks. But hockey really is Terry's sport. Remember, he bought the Sabres first, and the Bills weren't on the radar. Ralph Wilson was still alive. Terry's at the draft. Terry's at development camp. He's at prospect games. He's at training camp. He just never got his hands out of the Sabres, and there's been some bad luck involved. And, and everybody says, oh, he doesn't spend to the cap. You know what? I'm sick of hearing this on social media. They don't spend to the cap. You know what? You put another $6 million player on this team, they're still going to stink. And now they'll have spent to the cap and they'll stink. I'm tired of hearing about it.
I don't even know if any of it's bad luck. He's fired people too soon. He's not given his hockey ops staff the resources to succeed at critical times. I mean, over the years,
the lottery.
He's hired the wrong people.
What if they win Connor McDavid? Everything changes. Babcock's the coach. The whole franchise.
To be fair, they had Jack Eichel, and he's a pretty good player right now. Sam Reinhart's a pretty good player. Yeah, but still, there was a foundation in place, but they surrounded their young players with the wrong people. And I'm talking about other players on that team. Some of the trades that he made. Okay, we could go through it. There were a lot of missteps when it comes to Terry Pegula. And yes, he has to wear where this team is at. He's the only person who's been here for 13 years. Okay. And for whatever reason, he can't get it figured out on the hockey side of things. And I'm just very curious to see how he reacts next, because this is the one time he's shown patience, Mike. I've had fans push back on that. Oh, Terry's always patient. Look how much time Kevin's been given. Look at everybody else.
Well, it's easy.
He's given Kevin this much time because it's been young. He stripped it down, and it's been a rebuild. It's been 4 years.
Yeah. It's an easy fix.
Yeah.
President of hockey operations. Terry won't do it. He doesn't believe in the model. He won't do it. He should do it. He should hire a veteran president of hockey operations, even if he wants to make Karmanos the GM.
A lot of people wanted that role in 2020 when Adams got hired. And in 2021, before they got Karmanos in, a lot of people wanted that job. They wanted to work with Kevin Adams. They wanted to be in that president's role. And the Pegulas and Kevin Adams weren't interested in that. So
no. And it's
Jason Karmanos is
13 years, and he's not going to change, I don't think.
Jason Karmanos was brought in, but now I'm even questioning how much say does he actually have in this organization now that Jerry Fortin's basically running pro scouting and amateur scouting? It's a question, right? I mean, it's a fair question to ask at this point, because it seems like Jason Karmanos' power has been taken away in a lot of ways, and now, and that's the guy with the most experience. He's the one you should be leaning on. I'd argue he should be in the president of hockey ops role just based on his experience. He built the analytics staff to what it is.
He's got rings.
And he's got rings. He's seen what it takes to win in this league. It is very difficult, especially when you're trying to do it with so many young players, right? So
Terry Pegula doesn't trust anybody.
And there's reasons
He's had trust issues with outsiders. Kevin Adams was not an outsider. He was the guy next door at Harbor Center. That's why he got hired. Terry Pegula trusts him, and I'm cool with that. You hire people who you trust. But at some point, you have to go out of your comfort zone if you ever want to succeed. And let's be honest, Terry Pegula did not know Sean McDermott. He was coming off Rex Ryan. And he's never really taken that kind of leap of faith with the Sabres. I backed since the days of Murray and LaFontaine. Since then, it's been all who he knows. Let's bring Botterill, a Sabre guy. I know Kevin. And I just think Terry at this point needs to bring in some hockey people, get out of the way, sit and watch. He kind of does it anyway, but get out. I don't want to see Terry in the booth during prospect camp, and just get out of here. But it's just not how he operates. And he's never, I don't think Terry's fault is, I don't think he's ever looked in the mirror and ever said to himself, I'm the only one who's been here 13 years. I just don't think he's ever done that.
Everybody else's fault, Mike. Come on.
Because somebody should realize that point. And I just don't think Terry's ever come to grips with the fact that he is the biggest problem in an organization full of problems. He's the only connector through this entire drought. He's the owner, and as much as he loves hockey and as much as he loves the Sabres, he sure doesn't act it at times. And now that he became an NFL owner 3 years into his hockey team, it sure seems like he cares a lot more about his NFL team than he does about his hockey team.
Back at it, Mike. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. They still got home games to play, and they haven't been very good at home, and they haven't been good at all against these. They're 4-9-1 against Eastern Conference teams. You're not making the playoffs if you can't even beat teams in your own conference.
No,
it's bad. So
Detroit and the Rangers next week, but they got to get through Winnipeg and Utah. But yeah, and then you got Detroit and the Rangers coming, and who knows what happens.
They can lose to anyone. They've lost to Montreal. They've lost to Columbus. So it's like there's no gimmies on this schedule. This team's got to show up every
San
night.
Jose.
Yep, and the power play's not scoring again. So, right. And their 5-on-5 offense isn't been very good. There's a lot of problems for Lindy Ruff to fix. I'd love to hear his unfiltered opinion on just everything that's gone on. Because remember, when it was very different when he coached here last than what it is right now. A lot more young players too, and he saw New Jersey. Remember, he didn't win right away in New Jersey. He had to go through those growing pains with that group. It didn't happen overnight, and you could argue they exceeded expectations when they had that historic regular season, but still, he got it figured out. It was a grind to get there. I'm Lance Lysowski. He's Mike Harrington. This is Ice Time, the Buffalo News Hockey Podcast. Subscribe. This is how you can watch. We'd love to hear from you guys. Email Mike, email me. I'm sure at some point we'll do a mailbag episode where we take questions, get some readers involved, but we'd like to have you along every step of the way.
Ask me about Scott Wedgwood again.
Yeah, get Mike started on Scott Wedgwood. Ask him about some of the other third-string goalies who have beat this team over the years. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lance. He's Mike. Take care.